A contract that was presented to members of parliament shows that it was signed by Bamuturaki on behalf of Uganda Airlines. A one Andrew Irumba, the president of Uganda Independent Online Journalists Association, signed on behalf of the bloggers and journalists.
You kept using Andrew Irumba and Spy Uganda to fight whether it be personal battles with people you were working with and that kind of thing. So maybe help us understand. What exactly did you hire Andrew Irumba to do and his Spy Uganda online blog?
Their contract has the details. Like I said, allow me to put together information on this.
No, but you're the one who signed the contract and you're the one who paid them money up front. Backdating, you know, so in general.
The agreement was signed in December 2021. Uganda Airlines was supposed to pay 13 million shillings every month to the bloggers. The two parties also agreed to backdate the agreement to April 2021, and 117 million was paid to Irumba on behalf of the journalist.
To clarify, you are paying this provider from which resources? Secondly, in your submission you said that particular document the chair was talking about was brought to your office and taken down. My first question is, who amongst these people brought that contract to your office?
The journalists, according to the agreement, were supposed to defend Uganda Airlines and blackmail and also malign anybody or institutions, especially Parliament, that dare to question Uganda Airlines operations.
I think a CEO of an airline has a lot of time, like an idle MP representing a small village in Katanga. This is Andrew, and colleagues, those who can go to Facebook, you go to the page Andrew Irumba Live, because I don't want people to think I'm making these things up. I printed these out. So this is him.
Although the contract was supposed to be drafted by Bisereko Chomhendo, the company lawyer, he told members of parliament that he was not party to it. However, the agreement that was presented to members of parliament indicated that Chomhendo signed as a witness. Bamuturaki objected to comment on the agreement, saying that she would present a written explanation.
I said I wasn't prepared for the answers.
No, there are things you don't need to do homework for 2 weeks about, because you're the one who signed the contract. How come you didn't need to first? Because when I gave you this document, you immediately recognized it and you admitted that you're the one who signed it. Why didn't you say, give me 1 week to go and study and be sure I'm the one who signed? You immediately considered you're the one who signed it.
Regina Tebasima, a senior six-lever who is the acting commercial director of Uganda Airlines, said the journalists used to give her reports on their tasks, which reports she forwarded to Bamuturaki. When members of parliament asked her to present the copies of the report, she laughed off the request, which forced the committee chairman, Joel Senyonyi, to order police to detain her until she produces the reports.
I'm aware of the contract, but as the CEO has indicated, we respond in writing.
Madam, and she's laughing. For some reason you find this funny, Regina, yeah?
We don't need to ring police if we want to take you down. We don't need to take you to CPS. We have ours down here. So please don't take it lightly.
Members of parliament found out that Bamuturaki wrote mails to the former Uganda Airlines CEO to offer Bavata, a promotions company, 175 million per month to promote the national carrier. Bamuturaki, who was the commercial director by then, reminded Muleya that Bavata deserved the contract because it is owned by a pastor who prayed for Muleya's wife to defeat a life-threatening illness.
Eventually, the one that is hired is the most expensive one. Number two, that one which is hired, the process was not followed. In fact, part of the process was forged.
Tony Patila Humza, CTV, PM edition.
May, June, July.
Good morning once again. Welcome back from that short commercial break. My name is Priva Elibaz. The conversation on Our Twitter Jobs continues. And if you just joined us right now, in Our Twitter Jobs 1, we were discussing COSASE, investigating Uganda Airlines' high salaries, recruitment, and losses in the fiscal year of 2020-2021. And of course, they did based on the Auditor General's report for the financial year ending June 30th, 2021. So we are going to still be getting a deeper understanding, and joining me at the center of this conversation this morning is Mr. Yusuf Serunkuma, who is a researcher as well as a social analyst. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And the very first question I'm going to pose to you. Your thoughts on COSASE rejecting the plea by the Uganda Airlines not to allow the media to cover the proceedings. What are your thoughts about that? Were they fair, or is it just for a public institution or a public company like Uganda Airlines to just, handle these things in private?
I think about 2 weeks ago, I wrote a piece in The Observer. I hope you read The Observer.
Yes, I do.
Where I thanked Joe Sonyi for the good job. It's a good job he's doing, but I said, no, thank you. It's not the job we demanded from him to do. So in that opinion, I'm arguing that the stuff that COSASE is doing is good opposition politics, right? In a properly established political democratic space.
Yes. This
is the stuff for actual work of an opposition politician. It's pretty beautiful to do it. But, under Museveni political regime, the ways in which our politics is executed, this is spectacle for TV. And especially if we know the ways in which this country is governed, that whatever Mr. Museveni wants will actually have to go through. I questioned why Joe Sonyi was taking us through this sort of stuff. The spectacle, the drama, the thrill, the excitement, as if something is going to happen.
Yeah.
And earlier in this, he said there were threats against his life. He was getting threatened phone calls. He actually said in that piece that if he actually got killed for continuing this sort of interrogation in the committee, it will be him to be laughed at, right? Because this is a very small cause.
Yes.
It's a very small cause to be taking this entire country into the drama and thrill of it. If, for example, if the new Parliament, devoted more time on, for example, the computer misuse bill, which was recently, passed, maybe that would be time better spent. Right, but I think, when the Uganda Airlines people ask that this stuff be carried out behind the cameras, rather away from the cameras, and the Senjans and team insisting that it should continue before the camera, the question is who benefits from this drama and spectacle, right? I think COSASE stands to benefit more than the general public they seem to represent.
And the general public doesn't benefit from that, because I feel like, as Ugandans, we should be, knowing what happens with our taxpayers' money.
Okay, so the conclusion is if we know our taxpayers' money is being wasted, so what's going to happen next, right? And it's as if we don't know that our taxpayers are being wasted, right? If you look at the previous election, we voted the current crop of opposition politicians because we knew the way this country was governed was bad. We knew that our money is being wasted. We knew our money is being stolen for cheap. We knew all the stuff. We knew even much more, right? The Ugandan public needs no more convincing that Museveni's government is bad, that Museveni's government is tribalistic, that Museveni's government is a murderous regime. The Ugandan public needs no more convincing. Who doesn't know?
We already know.
You think anybody doubts how bad Museveni's government is? You think we haven't qualms about the continued thievery and the continued, pillage and giving of our resources? We don't. In fact, it is on our understanding that Museveni's government is bad that NU people are voted into parliament. It was on that, and the idea wasn't to convince us more that the government is bad. No, it wasn't that. It was as a whole pass from of this government, right? Unless you want to argue that by doing this, you are actually you are on the journey to removing the government, which is not, I don't think that's what they're trying to do.
Yes.
What they are trying to do is to embarrass this government much more. Now you embarrass those who feel embarrassed. right? I was watching the show. You guys were reading those tweets, and I think it was you who made the comment that this woman, as she's being investigated, she's actually carrying out her duties as the chief executive officer. So what the heck is wrong with this drama? Right? What the heck? But I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what's happening. What's happening here is that the senior news and team reneged on the job they were sent to do. Right? Now they're doing mainstream stuff, the easy stuff. This is very cool to sit in the studios there, rather sitting in a swanky with all the teas on the table, with all
cameras and the microphones,
and just talking. Right? When Kizza Besigye was on the streets walking over raising commodity prices, they were not doing anything.
Yes.
Right? This is easy stuff. This is very commonplace to sit in parliament and interrogate people. It's very easy. No broken bones, no risk to your life. Perhaps even increases your pay grade, you know. So who benefits from this? It's just the spectacle of it because they reneged on the job. But also you got to understand that this is very convincing to the public, right? It's very convincing to the ordinary voter because, you know, even when we know, you know, knowing a bit more is exciting. And, you know, by this, they're looking to be playing opposition. They're playing mainstream opposition. This is the stuff we used to accuse Kizza Besigye of doing. You know, we had the Nandala committees. If you remember, I don't know how old you are, but if you remember, sometime after Chogam in 2007, you must have been very young then.
Oh, yeah.
We had a very boisterous, pompous, smart, a man of flair and panache. Nandala Mafabi was once in charge of a committee called the Public Accounts Committee.
The PAC, yes.
It almost made him president of this country. We saw the interrogation. Then came Abdul Katin to investigate the Bank of Uganda. And some other committees have come. They've done quite spectacular work there. Spectacular for the cameras. And the final analysis of things, we just remain where we are.
We're not getting
We're
any
even
answers.
worse off than where we were. So you wonder, what was all the drama with these committees? Right? So when you renege on your job, but you have to perform politics, you have to appear opposition. This is what they're doing. We sent them for a job bigger than this. And that was the promise. They said they were removing a dictator.
Yes.
Now they're embarrassing the dictator. Right? And I think that's, you know, there's an image, there's a Russian joke about when the Mongols controlled the Russians. This is a long time ago. We don't hear about Mongol colonialism. But when the Mongols controlled the Russians, that's not a very nice joke.
I think I'll pick up on it.
So a Mongol warrior was riding on his horse, and he met a Russian peasant with his wife. And then he said to the Russian peasant, I'll go on and rape your wife. And as I rape your wife, you will hold my testicles so that they don't get soiled by the dust. And the Mongol warrior went ahead and did this terrible deed on the wife of the Russian peasant. And when the Mongol warrior was done doing his deed and had ridden out on his horse, the Russian peasant was celebrating. I did it. I did it. And his abused wife couldn't understand. What is wrong with my husband? He has just seen me go through a very gruesome, terrible act by a colonizer. Why is he celebrating? You know why? The husband explained, at least I soiled his testicles. They are dirty. Right? How do you celebrate a small thing of just dirtying the testicles of a rapist?
Of a rapist, yeah.
When you had the opportunity to actually pick your panga and cut off the testicles. Of course, there'll be consequences trying to cut off the testicles of a rapist who is powerful and controlling, right? But that's the challenge of revolutionary overcoming.
Yes.
That's the job Senior was sent to do. They're here soiling the testicles of rapists, and they want us to cheer along. But I guarantee you it's the spectacle of opposition politics, nothing beyond that.
Nothing beyond. Well, let's talk about some of, the pertinent issues that have come up in the Auditor General's report in regard to the Uganda Airlines. The appointment of the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Jennifer Bamuturaki. She was appointed without necessarily being vetted. Do you think she was not telling something to the committee? Because, I mean, after being asked to explain that, she basically had nothing to say.
Which I think she was reminding the committee of her superior position in this entire affair, right? But we're going to go back to the ways in which this country, we were not born yesterday. If you lived here, you know, in this country, if you open all the human resource manuals of many departments, public service, you'll find many of the appointments very questionable, right? you'll find many of these appointments very questionable. The only difference that now we have Bamuturaki in the news, right? But that's the modus operandi of this government, of this regime, the anti-elitism, the disregard for qualifications, the disregard for competence, and the disregard for the best. Most of our best in this country have been relegated to opposition. They've been put on the sidelines. We are running sort of a cartel. You know, at the end of the day, I've argued that at the end of the day, you realize perhaps Museveni was Mexican. Well, not in blood and lineage, but perhaps in mentality and practice.
Mentality was
after successful hunt, right? You know, if after successful hunt, you benefit, you invite to the dining table kin and kindred and friends, irrespective of what they are, irrespective of their qualifications. Problem is that he's running a government, right? So if you go to the human resource manuals, to the question you asked me, and say I think as so far established, perhaps she's unqualified, right? But when did lack of qualifications matter? When did it matter? There's a public appointments office. We have so much power enshrined in the hands of the president that he can appoint so many people. Before Beth Kamya became minister, before she expired and joined the interim government, she used to be critical of the amount of power that Museveni has in many political appointments. When you look at our constitution is like a job listing. There will be a job here, there will be a job here, there will be a job here, there will be a job there, there will be a job there. And Mr. Museveni has so much power over those jobs, right? But away from these sort of technical appointments, if you look at the political appointments, you know, there's a relationship. If he has the people he described as farmers, right? You know, he described, we were shocked by his government of farmers. That's what the president described them. Perhaps to ignore, to signal to the fact that these are like low-brow technocrats I'm appointing to pretend over this big. These are low-brow political appointments I've put in place to pretend over the technocrats. What was the expectation? Right, so against that, you listen to the submission by Mr. Pereza Hawe, right? The former board chairperson. It's very scandalous. You know, he says he wonders why General Salim Saleh in office also receiving this document, right? And then we're here wasting a lot of our time asking questions which should be asked in a properly established democratic order, and we're asking what we call an autocracy. I think it's obnoxious. I think it's very showy of Parliament and the committee. And to return to the question you ask, it doesn't matter whether Jennifer has the qualifications.
As the right person for the job. Well, as we put the whole COSASE probe aside, how do you think the issues of Uganda Airlines should be handled?
Should be handled?
Yes.
Oh, that's a very big question. Maybe you should have asked me.
Be handled, and also how can they, what needs to be done to clean up these irregularities that have been brought to light as a result of the COSASE probe into the Uganda Airlines?
Okay, you're going to call me cynical here. I don't know where we're going with the Uganda Airlines thing, right? You know, you got to go back to its beginning.
Yes.
Why was it started in the first place? Was it a thing of the many things that this country needs? Was investing in an airline a major thing? Right? Of course, it's good for a country to have an airline, right? Many of the airlines are not making profit, you know, except, you know, Ethiopian.
Yes.
Many of these airlines are prestigious airlines. They're not making profit. So, you know, we wanted to be among those with an airline, right? Which should be obnoxious in its own right. You know, the idea that because we also should is very dangerous. So these are the beginnings.
So you think we actually decided to have an airline because of other countries in the region?
Yeah, because we want to be like them. It's as simple as that. You know, I'm a bit, you know, we still struggle to find food and water, like basic food and water. We're struggling, natural disasters are happening across this country, and we are snailing to really rescue people. People died in Mbali not too long ago. They were being pulled out of a stream, not a river, not a lake, a stream, by people with ordinary hands, ropes pulling at a taxi, right? We didn't have this heavy, to like raise them, get them off from where they had, died. It was very embarrassing. You know, I mean, when you look at COSASE Muslims happening not too long ago, we might be having the same in Wududa. Our responses are very, very slow, right? Cambodians have been really dying from absolute lack of food and water. And our response is very poor. If you look at our education system, the amount of money is going there. You know, I was seeing people who went to Kenya to, you know, what is the technical term? Like observe the election. And they're saying they were looking at public schools in Kenya with, oh my God, every public school has a bus, skyscrapers. And these are like in the countryside, far deep in the countryside. You know, if you look at our list of priorities, we shouldn't be competing in spectacle and prestigious things. So, you know, this is my you know, this is my sort of my cynical view of this country. Our list of priorities. How you know, how would you rank an airline? It's making losses all through and through, and now right here we are in this other mess.
What can they do to, you know, cure these irregularities though? What do you think they can do?
No, we gave the seniors an assignment. You know, we gave them an assignment. They promised to do something, and this is why they were brought into office. And I should tell you a bit more about the election of the NUP and most of the people in the opposition. I'm very disappointed with them as a voter and as a Ugandan. Is that, you know, most of these were voted. We didn't even know them. We didn't even know them very well. But they you know, collected themselves in a thing we tend to call a wave. And every time you speak about a wave, and they better beware, every time we speak about a wave is to speak about their being insignificant. The wave was more significant than their names and their CVs.
Yes.
You know, some of those folks can't even construct a proper English sentence because the transactions in Parliament happen in the English language, right? We've seen them speak, you know, I was shocked. Some of my friends signed the computer misuse
amendment bill.
You know, this is how they look, like, you know, this is how we've been conned by our opposition. When you start asking questions now, what should be done? Because of the exposure by the people in COSASE, most of them, I've seen my friend Nkunyenji Mwada, and I'm like, it's not we assigned you to do, right? We gave you a bigger job. And because you realize 2 months in that, you know, maybe not even 2 months in, you realize this is a job way beyond our capacity, so you fell for the easy one, right? So we gave these folks a job. We voted them on the wave, which signals their insignificance. We didn't know them. We didn't know them, which meant we didn't ask them to go to Parliament and speak good English. You know, I mean, if they make mistakes and we laugh at them, I think it's our problem laughing at them.
Because you're the ones who voted them into power.
The assignment, if I understood so well, as an observer and as a voter myself, was at least the smallest you can do. Take Parliament away from Parliament Avenue and take it to the streets of Kampala. That was a better assignment, right? That was a better assignment, and that was the promise.
Yes.
They were removing a dictator. Now sitting in the dictator's apartment, in the dictator's game, and being part of the dictator's drama and spectacle is nothing short of being shortchanged. Yeah.
Well, I like the fact that, let's switch gears first a bit. I like that you mentioned the computer misuse amendment bill of 2022 that was passed last week after being tabled by Honorable Muhammad Nsereko. What are your 2 cents? What are your thoughts about the bill?
I don't know. I mean, unlike people who are critical of the contents of the bill, I want to appreciate the bill. You know, you know, I'm a scholar, and one of the things that I've learned to appreciate is that, you know, the nature of our autocracies, modern autocracies, the new autocracies, leave alone Bokassa, Idi Amin, Mubarak, those were kind of old.
Yes. Those
governed by decree. You know, the president pronounced what he wanted and it had to happen. And they didn't have a parliament. Those were the old school autocracies, you know, Idi Amin, Bokassa.
That's how they carried out their thing.
They didn't have a parliament. They governed by presidential decree.
Yes.
They declared life presidencies. They never had elections. Gaddafi, no elections, right? Now the modern autocrat is smarter than his predecessors. The modern autocrat reproduces himself through the law. Every form of autocracy that he wants to put in place has to go through parliament. It is enshrined in law. Modern autocracy has to be understood as enshrined in the constitution, right? No presidential term limits, no age limit. That's a life presidency. But it's in the law, right? You can say, oh, this man's a dictator. He doesn't come through it. Like, well, he has a constitution. He actually forced the constitution, right? You know, we had the public order management bill. You know, you can't assemble. It's in the law, but that's how autocracies work. But it's in the law. If you challenge, you have to go to court, and the court is filled with the people who they're called cadres, right? Verdicts are not negotiated in the court chambers. Verdicts are negotiated behind the curtains. They are like financial transactions or political transactions. And what is read on the floor is the spectacle of a verdict, which it's like signing, you know, a bill, like a contract at the end of all the negotiations, right? So you need to understand how autocracies reproduce themselves. I don't really care about the details of this bill. You know, a beautiful piece by Monitor, you know, columnist Daniel Kalinachi, is that it was even poorly written. That's a small detail. You gotta appreciate how autocracies reproduce themselves. The modern ones are smarter. They hold regular elections, and they're certain to win them by fine margins.
Yes.
They won't say, I'm not going to run. You know, for example, the Al Jazeera journalist Muhammad Val sat down with Mr. Museveni not too long ago to ask him, I think this was about 2011, and he asks him, won't you be remembered as a dictator? This is the Al Jazeera journalist. And someone says, really? A dictator elected 5 times? How can that be a dictator? Then that must be a good dictator, right? Now, that response by Mr. Museveni captured the crisis of the ways in which we execute our democracy on the African continent. That what the merchandisers, what the advocates of democracy didn't understand was that, you know, democracy can be subjected to the market. It can be subjected to behind the curtain negotiations. It can be fetishized. The decisions in an election can be manipulated to the victory of the one who wants it. The election happens. Because how can you then turn against Mr. Museveni and say, can you call him an autocrat? No. No, you can't, because he's democratically elected. So the crop includes Robert Mugabe before he passed, used to be elected. Mubarak in Egypt used to be elected those many times. Bashir, before he was kicked out, used to be elected those many times. So Museveni is in that crop too. The modern autocrat is a legally produced autocrat. He's a newly minted man every time. So you need to, if you understand this broader scope, then you'll fit in Serco's bail.
In the Serco's bail.
And not once, not twice, the modern autocrat, we will all find willing allies. We'll often find smart people, good English, dandy, handsome, maybe not too handsome. You'll always find these people, beautiful women. He will empower the women, right? He's empowered so many, right? He'll empower for the cosmetics and spectacle of it. He will empower many women, and they will love it. But that's the nature of the modern autocrat. He allows a free media. Folks like myself will appear here and they will sound critical. But that's the nature of the modern autocrat, right? He's not as crude as the old type. No, that's stuff for the past. He took his lessons really seriously. He reproduces himself through the law, through the constitution. Every piece of autocracy for him is enshrined in the law. In the law.
Well, I like that in your earlier submission you talked about the POMA, the Public Order Management Act. Yes. One of the things that people mentioned about the POMA is that it kind of stifles the expression of the freedom of expression. But also when you look at the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill, it also seems to also kind of shut up people's digital rights. Do you think it's a direct attack on people's freedom when it comes to using social media, especially social media now, because we're in an era of social media? So I would love to know from you if you think the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022 is actually a direct attack on people's freedom of expression.
You got to appreciate the nature of technology on the African continent, right? Maybe also elsewhere, technology on the African continent is that, being sort of an import, we didn't produce technology. Technology was imported onto the African continent. Every single African country, it's not exclusive to Uganda, only allowed this sort of open, liberal, technopolitics to, avenues of accessing technology, social media, whatever we're doing with technology, before making sure it had a back door, right? Before making sure it can take it away, right? That was the only way they allowed it to happen, right? And many organizations have been, your neighbors here, UNCTAD, were very strong in pushing for and rolling out fiber optics and making sure there's access technology across the African continent. Technology itself is a form of control, right? It's a form of control. The market access to technology so that to control us and determine the ways in which we exercise our lives in our daily routines. But all governments across the African continent had to make sure first they had a backdoor that, once it looks like technology is being used to sort of generate a different form of opinion, you got to take it away, right? So they had to have a backdoor. This happened in Ethiopia. Ethiopia did it quite successfully. Tanzania has done it quite successfully. Rwanda has done it quite successfully. Now, there are extremes of it. Compared to the nature of the threat, the nature of the time spent in office, the nature of hostility from the general public translates into the nature of hostility from the government towards its people.
Yeah,
right?
towards its people, yes.
So what you're witnessing right now is that, limiting digital space, even when we know that, it's been a useful space for young people, not just to express themselves, but also to business.
Yes.
Right? You got to limit it. But look, on the other hand, should I tell you this? On the other hand, MTN mobile money, which is a piece of technology, right? It has like no regulation. You know how much money they take from you every time you make a transaction? It's obnoxious, right? A humongous, it's lots and lots of money. They don't care because it's the market, right? While on the other hand, you'll be like, we need regulated mobile money transactions. The bank will take away very few cents from you when you make a withdrawal, any transaction. But on the other hand, the telecommunication companies, because most of them are foreign owned, and foreign capital can only reproduce itself in a space.
Yes.
After being in good company, in good working relation with the state, right? They have a free ride. We live with thieves in our telephones, right? Every single piece of production we want to execute, they take away so much money.
Something, yes.
Not something, but a lot of money. But our regulators think it's normal. But on the other hand, just your expressions, just your little insults on social media hurt them so much. They hurt them so much. So you need to understand these dynamics. Then your technology, governments have to have a back end. And depending on the nature of hostility that the government feels to be getting from the general public, it will translate to the extent of control. So in spaces like Uganda, the extent is really, really high because the government feels the public is very hostile to it. Consider the governments in Kenya, for example, where they don't feel any hostility from the general public.
Yes.
Because they're there for a small period and they leave. There's no control whatsoever. Well, there is control, but not in the spirit of, gagging, public sentiment and digital space for young people. But I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning. You need to appreciate all these things through a context of our politics. That this is uniquely Ugandan. There are general flashes of it across the globe, right? I mean,
you mentioned Ethiopia.
When you go to Europe, it's the same thing. But like right now, Europe is in a state of war. They've gagged all media houses from Russia. You can't watch Russian news, right? They're Twitter as a space itself is gagging seemingly critical voices. So you got to have a frame to understand that political dispensations tend to limit access to public space by whatever channel, but it depends on the amount of hostility that the government feels is coming from the people.
Well, I'm going to still speaking on the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill of 2022. I'm going to quote Minister Norbert Mao, the Minister of Constitutional Affairs. He said, "This law will make our fingers slow down on social media. The same God who loves us has hell. I think many people wouldn't be behaving if there was no hell." Do you think this highlights the fact that there could be some bad clauses in the Computer Misuse Act?
No, they're not some bad.
Amendment bill, I beg your pardon.
They're not bad clauses. The entire thing is really bad. Right?
As a whole, it's...
Yeah, the entire thing, and in his earlier life, leave alone the new life, Norbert Mao would have been stronger in his wording than that, right? In his earlier life, he would have called it names and thrown some really beautiful insults in there. But he's now a tamed man, right? He's a reform, newly minted. He's promising to you know, be the man of the transition, right? You know, so he's going to transit from himself.
Help opposition work with the government.
Yeah, I mean that's the new Mao, and he's kinder and gentler in his speech, but it's all of it is bad. You know, you hosted my lawyer friend Isaac Simakade here not too long ago. It's bad in its entirety, right? You didn't need it. There's an earlier law, right? They didn't demonstrate awareness of it, right? Clearly, if you look at it very broadly, you appreciate they want to gag being put to task.
Being put to task.
You know, we as I think. If you can tell from the amount of anger from the general public when people seemingly friends of the government pass on, the anger on social media is huge, and they don't want to stop that because it makes them feel bad, right? But you know the everyday forms of protest. The everyday forms of protest is what people do when they're angry, right? These are not major things that can topple a government, but they make the leaders feel bad. Right, so this is meant to gag everyday forms of protest, because everyday forms of protest are often disorganized. The individual. So as you sit on your computer and you are insulting General Museveni, and if you're Stella Nyanzi, if you're throwing an insult to whoever is your target, if you're my friend Kakwenza, Richard Bashaija, you are participating in what would technically be called an everyday form of protest. And if your boss here was not paying you well, you would engage in a form of protest by being lazy on the job, right? It's a form of protest. Or by calling in sick. Would you be lying? But disruption is a form of protest itself. So you know, the stuff that people do on their private cell phones or computers, which is sort of anti-government, which is often rendered as an initiative of language, is a form of protest, right? So, you know, the nature of our regime has gotten so paranoid that they want to even enter into those small space of everyday forms of protest. And I guarantee you, they'll arrest so many people. People will be arrested because, you know, that's happened. But you know, at some point, people are going to find victory in their being arrested. And I think this is a difficult thing to say, but, you know, when you engage in a form of protest and you are called, it means you achieved. Because it's the catharsis, the good feeling you feel when you throw an insult to Mr. Museveni, he responds. If you Kakwenza Richard Bashaija and you insult Afande Mhos Kainerugaba, and he responds by arresting you and torturing you, there's victory in it. It's not bodily victory because you get hurt, but there's victory in that you actually made them feel bad. That's the form of victory that local people look for, that unorganized, no political group. That's the sort of thing they look for. When we were fighting the colonial government, I didn't participate, but when my grandparents were fighting the colonial government, yes. You know what they used to do? Oh, you need to look at the poetry of Okot Pabite. Oh, that was, I don't know if it's acceptable on TV to read you some of the poems of Doc Otto, a legendary, you know, Acholi poet. The stuff they used to say in their poetry, I don't know if I could read you, you know, like he would say things like, I'm going to kill the poetry and make it incomprehensible. He would say things that I'll ride my bicycle to Gulu. When I meet the Queen's mother, listen to this, when I meet the Queen's mother, I will sleep with her in the middle of the road. This is poetry, this is anti-colonial poetry. I'm going to ride my bicycle to Gulu. When I find the Queen, the deceased mother, I'll jump on him in the middle of the pitch, right? And they were arrested many, many times, right? But these were forms of, they're disorganized, they were unorganized. There was no order. Everyday forms of protest tend to be unorganized. And
disorganized. And everyone is doing.
And they don't, you know, focus on achieving a bigger goal. Maybe an accumulation of all of them, right? Now, our government is so paranoid, extremely paranoid. Of course, long stay causes paranoia, to enter into that small space where people in the comfort of their bedrooms or washrooms pick their gadgets, a cell phone, and say something nasty, right?
Yes.
But you know, the beauty of it for me as a reader of revolutionary moments, the beauty of it, I've argued before, that social media, in a way, takes away the anger, right, from the public. When you're angry and you say your anger on a social media space, you're angry less, and you've released this sort of energy.
Frustration.
Yet, as a reader of Revolution, I want this energy to be kept in. I want it to be held in, so that at that critical moment when it explodes, it's violent, it's powerful, it's unstoppable. Right? Social media has been a constant release of this energy. I think it's not very nice. So it's really funny that in gagging social media expression, they're actually heading towards their own, own annihilation by their own act, which is really fascinating. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to switch the conversation to the Queen. Queen Elizabeth, I beg your pardon, the second of the United Kingdom. What's that one thing you remember about her?
Why do you say remember about her?
What's that one thing that
she was? No, she is not. You can't say she was. You can't talk about the Queen in the past tense.
Oh.
As an African, the Queen is not dead. Okay, maybe this is very confusing, but the Queen is not dead, right? Because, how did we get access to the Queen? We got access to the Queen through the colonial regime. We're colonized, right? And I've argued over and over again that colonialism didn't go away. It only changed face. So what happened is that we had colonial posts. They turned into embassies. And organizations such as the IMF and the World Bank, the United Nations Organization. We have the court in The Hague.
Yes,
we have seemingly friendly people in these embassies. They give us visas. They wear suits. So the colonizers dropped those short khakis to suits and neckties. They don't carry guns. They carry pens and they sign contracts with us. They are our friends. They call us for tea and coffee, and they're good to us.
Colonialism is
but
very much
under the coffee and neckties and good English and contracts and sometimes grants and loans and stuff like that is unstopped, contained pillage. Our resources continue to flow into Europe and North America as if colonialism didn't even end. Right? So the Queen is not dead.
I get it when you say the Queen is not dead.
The Queen is not dead. We accessed her through colonialism. Colonialism is still here with us. And I could maybe give you a couple more examples. I've argued that, for example, Ugandans are the sponsor of the Barclays Premiership, right, in the UK. And you look at your face, you're like, how did that happen? How do you sponsor that? It's your money, girl. It's your money that sponsors the Premier League. And unfortunately for you, you can watch it on TV. You can walk into a stadium, right? Sorry for that. Because you know how these big banks, which are supporting the league, make their most money here. The most profitable banks in the world, and listen to this carefully, in the world, the most profitable banks are in this region.
In Africa.
Are in Uganda, are in Kenya, are in Ethiopia, and the most profitable. And those banks support the Premier League, right? Only in this region is where you have interest rate at 15%. 15.
For the bank,
30%.
Bank of Uganda, yes.
30% as interest rate. The commercial banks, most of them foreign owned. They charge interest rates as obnoxious as 30%, 15%, 12%. Nobody makes money from that. No, there's no business person who can thrive in a regime where the interest rate is at 15%, 12, 7. In Europe, it's 0.5, 1%. Right? If it goes to 2, there'll be riots in the streets of Europe. Right?
Wow.
There'll be riots. Now here, these fellows come here and they're like, we don't trust the Africans. We don't trust them. When you give them loans, you don't know they're going to pay back. Right? The price of processing and managing the loans in Africa is very expensive. Why? We don't trust these Africans. Right? So they take 15, 30, 12, 7 as interest. They're selling property here. All your sweat you put in, they take back.
They take back to their countries.
They take back to support the Premier League. In fact, you are effectively the sponsor of the Premier League. But you don't know. No more Africa will be like, how? But it's called ABSA. Is it called ABSA? Is it Barclays? Yeah, Barclays Premiership. Barclays was the biggest commercial bank here for a very long time before they sold. Right? So basically, you made Henry what he was. Right? So, to go back to the Queen, sorry, I made it football. No, but I was just giving an example about the banking sector because the banks are foreign owned, so which means colonialism continues.
Yes.
Coffee, for example, which is our major cash cow, coffee.
Export, yes.
Companies in London, in Germany, in Hong Kong, make 3 times, 7 times what you get as a farmer. Those countries don't have a single stem of coffee. They don't have a single one, like one. They don't have a single garden of coffee. Most of their coffee comes from the rest of the world, the former colonized world. So from Ethiopia, which is a big exporter of coffee, from us here, from Kenya, from all these countries, they earn 7 times from what you earn.
Yes.
7 times. And those companies have businesses here. They have houses here. So when they say, oh, government of Uganda, which means Ugandan farmers, earned 1.8 trillion Uganda shillings from coffee in 2020 or 2019. When you hear a figure like that, about 60%,
yes,
which is counted as government of Uganda, didn't come here. It didn't come. Right, so it didn't count. So because you don't have a single farmer, you can say that's a rich tycoon and he's made his money from coffee.
From farming,
you know anybody?
Coffee.
No, they're not there. Yet this is the biggest cash cow. Our major export. We don't have rich tycoons you can point a finger at and say. We point to people owning small things like malls, owning small things like shops, owning small things like little factories. Like not cars, markets, small markets. We point to them as rich people.
Small things, yeah.
Very small things. How come we don't have people dealing in, say, the mining sector? Who do you know? Who others in gold? Who are the rich people making money from gold? We don't know them, right? But 2021, the biggest export was gold. Where does it go? It goes back to Britain,
our colonies.
UK, our colonies.
Yes.
So the Queen is not dead. For the African beware, the Queen is not dead. If the Queen had died, you'd be rich. The Queen is not dead, so you shouldn't talk about the Queen in the past tense.
Well, I think I get how you're trying to remember the colonizer. Well, let's talk about the fact that some critics think African countries shouldn't mourn the Queen entirely. What's your take on that? Because many believe like you just put it out there, colonialism is still very present in our African society, even after these white men are long gone.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
I don't
about
know.
mourning. Should we mourn? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't take away the fact that we are colonies for the British, for the British. So,
well, we know them. They look like we know them. We deal with these people. I mean, it's fair to mourn the death of a loved one of your friend. It's only fair to that. But it should be divided. You should let people mourn the way they feel. If you feel, even in African tradition, there are sayings that allow us not to mourn. If I don't know if you're married, but if you lost a co-wife, if your co-wife died, traditionally, you're not allowed to go to the garden. But the Waganda said, at least you dig behind the door.
Peep?
You dig behind the door. Pick your hoe and at least dig behind the door. They won't see you digging, but you feel good about it. My co-wife died. I'm supposed to go to the garden. But at least I'm going to dig inside the house so that in my sort of anger, I'm happy she's dead. I'll go to the garden, but inside my house. People should be allowed to mourn the way they feel. I'm not very comfortable with having a singular sentiment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we should be coerced into a singular sentiment, Some people feel so dear. I mean, if you called my friend here, Timothy Kalija, he feels so passionate about mourning the king, the queen. He's sort of fully into, I wouldn't say like properly colonized, but he feels, the white people have a special genius to perfection, right? And so if the embodiment is the queen, he will mourn. Let him have his day, right? If you feel like me, who might feel like these are colonizers, they don't have friends. When they come and shake hands with us and laugh with us, I feel they don't have friends, right? They're honestly stealing from us. They're stealing marine resources from Somalia. I studied Somalia. They're stealing marine resources from Somalia. Even last week, countries like Norway and Spain and Portugal have made their wealth from stealing Somali marine resources, right? Countries such as Israel, they've made their fortunes stealing minerals from Congo. A single man, the richest man in Israel, owns 90% of the mining sites in Congo. So we moved from King Leopold, who killed 8 million people, to Dan Gatla, who may not necessarily be accused of the people dying in the wars in Congo, but he's the biggest owner of the mines.
Yes.
Something, it was minerals leaving Congo to Antwerp in Belgium, now minerals leaving Congo to Israel. Something. I think they're not our friends. I should be allowed to dig behind my door. And while in revolutionary spirit, I'll at least go dig in my courtyard. I should be allowed to do that. I'm not very comfortable with the singular sentiment, we should all react the same.
Yes.
It depends on your level of sophistication. If you feel, you know, oh, we speak English, oh, the Queen gave us English, okay, then you should celebrate and mourn the Queen's death, right? You feel you're conscripted onto speaking English. It wasn't a favor given to you. You had your language. I think I sound better in Luganda. Maybe better in Kiswahili, you know, but I was conscripted into speaking the English language. I don't owe anybody anything because I speak English.
I totally understand.
If I feel like that, I should be allowed to express myself that way, right? EFF, the South African sort of revolutionary anti-colonial party headed by Julius Malema, put out a very radical statement, which ends in a nice way. It says the Queen should get what she deserves, right?
Yes.
Now, you don't know what she deserves. If she loves heaven, may so be. If she loves hell, maybe so.
Look at her.
Yeah.
Well, in the interest of time, I would love to, you know, get your final remarks in regard to the conversations that we've had today, straight from the COSASE probe into the Uganda Airlines, down
how
to
can I do that? How can I do this?
No, like, just, you know, your final, yes, like just give us like an
overview. How can I do that? It's, you know, it's kind of difficult to do that. Right? I don't know, man. I mean, from COSASE to the Queen, how is it?
No, I just want you to give us like, you know, a wrap up as, you know, your final remarks as we wind up.
I don't know unless you ask me a very specific question.
Okay, I'm going to be specific about COSASE. Your final remarks in regard to the COSASE probe into the Uganda Airlines.
Jennifer Bamuturaki will be CEO as long as Museveni wants it. Right? As long as Museveni wants it. She will be CEO. Right? She's already executing the job of CEO comfortably. You know, when she comes in the committee and prefers not to speak, that's power, girl. That's power. That's power. You have the liberty to remain silent. That's power. That's not weakness. That's power. So, I mean, on that, she will be president. My problem, what I also want to say to the committee members, my friends, wonderful friends of mine, that we know the game. You're not doing this country any service. You're actually reneged on the actual job you're supposed to do. We know the game. We know the game. You're raising your paycheck, right? You're raising your paycheck, and please don't be fooled at one time that we don't see through it. Those who came before you actually did the same things, and they were kicked out of parliament, right? Yeah.
Bamuturaki is a fair example. Let's talk about the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022. Your final remarks.
It's in tandem with the nature of our politics. It's very consistent. It's consistent with the nature of politics. And modern autocracies reproduce themselves through the law. So that bill is very consistent with the nature of politics. The critique shouldn't be the details. The critique should be the overall nature.
Do you think the president will assent?
He loves it. He loves it to death. I think so. He loves it. He loves it. I'll be surprised if he didn't, but I think he loves it. It speaks his language. I don't think Serko was using his head. I think he was hired to do the job. I could be wrong, but I think the smoothness with which it moved clearly signals that the big man wanted it. And, you know, it's still consistent with our politics. You know, everything, one of the things that sails through have to have the backing of the big man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf Serunkuma, for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea. Okay, well, that's all we had for you on this particular segment of Twitter Jabs. We did talk about a couple of, things, and, we discussed topics in regard to the COSASE probe into the Uganda Airlines. We also did, look at the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022 that was passed last week by Parliament. And then, we wrapped it up by talking about the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. Well, that's all we had for you. The conversation continues on our social media platforms. That is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at CTV Uganda. Don't go anywhere, because coming up is our views.